Now,
The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Live from the New Scientist Labs, Janine Young, newscientist.com.
yeah, where is she? Well, she's in Melbourne. Hello to you, Janine.
Good morning, Wammo.
Good morning. Let's talk first of all about Generation F. In the latest New Scientist magazine, they've brought up another generation. I thought there was X, there was Y, I think there was a C somewhere in there as well. Now there's an F.
We have a Generation Z too, apparently.
Oh.
Not that I've looked into that one greatly. It's all to do with how old you are and all that sort of stuff. But this is actually more related to social networking. And I think most people now would at least be aware of Facebook if they don't have an account. There's about 400 million people around the world do.
Yeah.
And it's fundamentally changing our human interactions. We can't help ourselves. We are naturally social creatures. We need to interact with the humans around us. Some of us are better at it than others. Some derive more worth, if you want to use that word, out of it than others. But what researchers are finding is that social networking, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, LinkedIn, any of these sorts of changes in the way that we communicate, are causing people to become more connected. Well, yeah, no surprise there. But it's changing the way we interact and the kind of emotions we're taking out of it. For example, the human brain, they reckon, can only handle about 150 good, genuine, solid, trusted relationships. We don't have the cognitive space or the time to be able to deal with any more.
And even that's quite a lot, isn't
That's
it?
still a lot of people, yes. Did you know that the average number of people, like friends on Facebook, is 130?
Right, well, yeah, I suppose that, yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's 130.
Yep.
Experiments have shown that if you have, say, around 300, that you are, in fact, more socially attractive, if you like. The fact that other people like you means that online people are going to like you as well. Again, that's probably not terribly surprising, but if you have more than 300, people look at you and kind of go, they're probably not really maintaining those relationships properly.
I know people with thousands.
You can't keep track of that many people. You can't genuinely, physically be able to keep track of that number of relationships. I did a cull recently on my Facebook account, which I've got shut down so tight that it's really limited to those I really genuinely know. And I'm down to 99.
I better check. Am I still there, Janine? Maybe I'm not.
I think I got your feeds yesterday, and I haven't posted recently, so you won't have seen mine. I've been through a quiet social networking phase. But in terms of the number of relationships that we can maintain, they say about 150. But if you have a lot of friends, whether or not they're actual friends, then you're considered to be more socially acceptable. But what's also interesting is that we tend to have more what they call weak ties, people that you know, but you might not know them very well. Old school friends, for example, people that you might have worked with, but you don't really know that well. You can actually maintain those relationships a lot better through things like Facebook, because you can kind of keep a running idea of what's going on in their life without needing to see them on a regular basis. So it means that when you do, you're then able to say, hey, Trixie, old friend from university, literally in this case, what the hell were you talking about last week when you said you were in Brisbane? Where the hell do you live?
Yeah.
So it means that you're able to maintain those relationships in a better way than you would otherwise have been able to do. An old school friend of mine recently got in contact via card. It was for a very specific purpose, but I don't know what's happened in her life for the last 15 years. So it means it's going to be harder to re-establish that relationship than if we'd been in sort of watching contact through Facebook. Interesting kind of interaction there, because it means that these weak ties are potentially able to boost people's self-esteem because you feel you have more friends, you have more social contact with the world, and you're never alone. So they're finding that people who are on things like Facebook and MySpace and LinkedIn have greater self-esteem than those who aren't. So for all the people that are saying, shut yourself off from the world, it's not going to work, I'm tired of all the electronics in my life, that's reasonable. But those who are better connected are indeed better connected, and they they do better in the world than those that don't.
I wonder, though, if that's long-term self-esteem. They're really building themselves up for a happy and fulfilled life long-term, or is this just short-term kind of, boost to the ego?
These studies have only been going for a short while because, Facebook's only been around for a certain number of years and there's only been mass uptake probably in the last 2, maybe extending it out to 3. I know I picked up my account in 2007 and there were only so many people on. I think it could be a longer term thing because if you have these slightly more genuine interactions with people that you don't know very well, it means that those who are paying attention and responding and commenting and liking, thinking of just Facebook, what you're saying and what you're linking to, the videos you're putting up, your photos, then potentially it could be a longer term way of doing things. Case in point, I have a friend who is very difficult to deal with in person. He's socially awkward in the extreme. Online, we have a fantastic relationship because I can interact with him on a level that we're both comfortable with. So it means that I'm maintaining that friendship and it means that his self-esteem is boosted because I am paying attention, I do like what he's saying, I do comment, we do interact, but it's in a much easier form for me. I'm quite outgoing, he's not. It's certainly a lot easier way to be able to maintain that relationship. So in the longer term, it is helping his self-esteem.
Okay, so
you can only imagine that it may be that kind of thing for quite a few other people.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, that's Generation F. Let's look at the other topic today. The pharmaceutical companies, drug companies, are waging war on the fake drugs.
This is a serious, serious problem. The World Health Organization estimates that up to 50% of all the drugs sold online are fakes. In the developing world, up to 30% can be counterfeit. And even in the developed world, some over-the-counter prescriptions, up to maybe 1 or 2% of them, are also fake. This has massive implications. If you have, say, a malaria vaccine, as happened to a whole bunch of kids, 2,500 of them in Nigeria in 1995, this has real health implications for people who take them. If you have an active ingredient that isn't there, that can be just as serious as a drug that has active ingredients that shouldn't be there, poisonous ones, for example. So, this is a big deal. There's a fantastic organisation called the International Medical Products Anti-Counterfeiting Task Force, IMPACT.
Well done.
Catchy title. I know, yes. I managed to get that out, but only just. Is actually looking into our anti-counterfeiting methods. It can be as simple as people changing the packaging. Now, this does happen because there are certain countries that have limits on the number of drugs that you're able to put into a packet and the like. So that does change according to where you are. But counterfeiters are looking at the packaging and looking at the holograms on the packets, and they're mimicking them so they can look for all the world genuine to those who don't really know what they're dealing with. That's one problem that they're able to kind of look at and go, we probably can't do too much about that. So now they're starting to look at a lot more sophisticated ways to be able to work out, say, what's in the drug. Using spectrometry, near-infrared, spectrometry, they're able to look at the signature that bounces back off the pill, for example.
Wow.
And can actually look at the active ingredients. They have specific chemical signatures that come back off this thing, and they can work out if the active ingredient is there, if it's there in the proportions it should be, indeed if it's not, if there's something else that's popping up that shouldn't do. This is all sort of, it's happening at the moment, but it's not incredibly widespread because it's actually not that easy to do. Another even harder, but indeed about to be implemented technique is to use nanotechnology. You have nanoscale etchings into tablets that are able to include things like logos and random numbers that are assigned to batches and where things were produced, where they're destined to be used, where they're being shipped to. A whole bunch of information can be encoded in this, and there is one drug produced by Capsugel, it's a Pfizer division, that later on this year they'll actually be using this technology to try and track where the drugs came from, where they're going to, and that should be much, much harder to be able to counterfeit. Not to say they won't try, because there's a lot of money to be made out of this.
It certainly is. Janine Young, New Scientist correspondent based in Melbourne City. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week.
See you next week.
And don't forget those stories you'll find in the New Scientist magazine coming out next week, and also, of course, New Scientist.